The subcommittee will come to order. The chair recognizes himself for an opening statement. This morning, the subcommittee on environment will mark up two bills to reauthorize Department of Energy environmental remediation programs. Last month, we received testimony in H.R. 2389 to reauthorize the West Valley Demonstration Project. We heard three different perspectives about challenges and opportunities at the West Valley, New York site. The bill's sponsor, Congressman Tom Reed, highlighted the importance of advancing cleanup at the West Valley location and its constituents, the local communities, and the district. A Department of Energy witness provided a historical perspective as the federal government partner on the ground, carrying out the statutory programs over the last 38 years pursuant to the West Valley Demonstration Project Act and the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, or NYSERDA, offered the host state's viewpoint on the importance of expediting cleanup activities at the site and transferring responsibility to dispose of material to the federal government. Obviously, Mr. Tonko also was connected to that in another life, so he has a great interest in this. I recognize the state of New York's interest in eliminating DOE's statutory prohibition on disposing high-level radioactive waste generated at the site over 50 years ago. There are different forms and quantities of this material at the site, and we know that some of the high-level radioactive waste from the reprocessing spent nuclear fuel must be sent to a deep geological repository at Yucca Mountain, Nevada site, as required under the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. As we heard, DOE is not expected to complete cleanup at the site until the mid-2040s, and that's a long time, Mr. Tonko. And so efforts of the House of Representatives to get our nation's nuclear waste management program back on track is critical for the disposal pathway. To get a better understanding of the alternative disposable paths for the remainder of the radioactive waste, Congress needs additional information. The amendment in nature of substitute, H.R. 2389, will help gather that information by directing the Government Accountability Office to identify the volumes and types of radioactive waste at the site, disposal options for the waste streams, including cost and timeframes and benefits, and challenges of each disposal option. This information will enable Congress to make a fully informed decision in the future. We will also consider H.R. 2278, the Responsible Disposal Reauthorization Act of 2017, introduced by Representative Scott Tipton and co-sponsored by my colleague on the Subcommittee on Environment, Representative Diana DeGette. In 1996, Congress reauthorized operations at the Cheney Disposal Cell in Mesa County, Colorado for 27 years, until September 30th, 2023. Ranking Member Pallone helped get that original bill enacted as a ranking member of the Subcommittee on Energy and Power in the 104th Congress. The bill before us today proactively extends the date for the uranium mill tailings disposal cell at Mesa County, Colorado to operate for another 25 years. I look forward to passing these bipartisan bills and continuing to advance policies to help the department meet its environmental cleanup goals and obligations. With that, I will yield back my time and yield to the ranking member, Mr. Tonko, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for holding today's subcommittee markup. As we heard during our legislative hearing last month, sites located across our country are dealing with the legacy of our nation's entry into the atomic age. Today, we will consider bills that address two of these sites, H.R. 2278, the Responsible Disposal Reauthorization Act, and H.R. 2389, a bill to reauthorize the West Valley Demonstration Project and for other purposes. The Uranium Mill Tailings Radiation Control Act established a process for remediating inactive uranium ore processing sites, such as the one in Grand Junction, Colorado. H.R. 2278 would authorize DOE to continue to operate the Cheney Disposal Cell through September of 2048 or until it is filled to capacity. Currently, DOE is authorized to operate this cell through September of 2023. I hope we can move this bill forward today. H.R. 2389 addresses a unique site in my home state, the Western New York Service Center in West Valley. The site is owned by New York State and from 1966 through 1972 was operated by a private company to reprocess spent nuclear fuel primarily provided by the federal government. This activity resulted in transuranic waste and high-level nuclear waste, which is continuing to be stored at that site. Since 1986, based on a DOE Inspector General report, DOE has classified the wastes at West Valley as commercial waste, rather than waste deriving from atomic energy defense activities. This has caused a major disagreement between DOE and New York for decades. Under this classification, DOE believes the cost for disposal of the waste should be borne by the state of New York, due to its ownership of the site. The state has reviewed documents from the site showing that 60% of the material sent to West Valley was from facilities that conducted defense activities, and 80% of the reprocessed plutonium shipped out of West Valley was sent to defense facilities. H.R. 2389, as introduced, would resolve this issue. In addition to clarifying the treatment of these wastes, the bill authorizes $75 million annually for 10 years for the West Valley Demonstration Project. This funding level is identical to the amount appropriated in fiscal year 2018 and will ensure the cleanup will continue on schedule. I support this bill and will have more to say if the amendment in the nature of a substitute is offered, but ultimately, I hope we can work together to resolve this unsettled nuclear waste issue. And with that, Mr. Chair, I thank you and yield back.
Gentleman yields back time. Chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Walden, for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. Welcome to our subcommittee markup. As you've heard, we're going to consider these two pieces of legislation that address projects at the Department of Energy's offices, environmental management, and legacy management. You know, much of our Energy and Commerce Committee's focus this Congress on modernization and lapsed authorizations at DOE programs has been overseen by Vice Chairman Barton and Energy Subcommittee Chairman Upton, and of course Chairman Shimkus has done a lot of work in this area as well. The two targeted bills before us today are part of the Environment Subcommittee's related efforts to address cleanup projects and legacy needs associated with the development and deployment of atomic energy technologies. As you've heard, H.R. 2278, the Responsible Disposal Reauthorization Act of 2017, extends the authorized operation of the Grand Junction, Colorado uranium mill tailings disposal cell for another quarter century, mirroring the length of time the site was originally authorized to operate. This proactive, bipartisan bill will assure this important cleanup site remains available to safely dispose of contaminated radioactive material. The second bill that we're taking up today reauthorizes the Department of Energy's environmental remediation activities at the sole location in the United States that reprocessed spent nuclear fuel for commercial purposes. That's in West Valley, New York. The state of New York owns the site and funds a portion of the cleanup activities at the location. The bill's sponsors, Congressman Tom Reed, is a strong advocate for an ongoing and strengthened partnership between DOE and the state of New York. I would also like to note the Environment Subcommittee ranking member, my friend Mr. Tonko, oversaw the program prior to his election to Congress. And I appreciate his leadership on this issue as well. I can't think of anybody that knows it better. That's correct, right?
Well, we were talking. I said he didn't fix it. That's why he came here.
Well, I wasn't going to go to the heart of the matter before us today, but you would have thought, you know. Marking up these bills this morning will continue our agenda to methodically review and renew, where necessary, important federal government programs. So I look forward to passage of these bills this afternoon, and with that, I yield back all 48 seconds.
Gentleman yields back his time. The chair looks to the minority side, see if there's any interest in an opening statement. Seeing none, the chair calls up H.R. 2278 and asks the clerk to report.
H.R. 2278, to extend the authorization of the Uranium Mill Tailing Radiation Control Act of 1978 relating to the disposal site in Mesa County, Colorado.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill would be open for amendment at any point so ordered. The chair recognizes himself to offer an amendment in nature of substitute, and the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to 2278, offered by Mr. Shimkus.
And the chair recognizes himself 5 minutes in support of the amendment in the nature of substitute. 40 years ago, Congress established a framework to dispose of uranium mill tailings. Uranium mill tailings are the byproduct material left over after mining and processing uranium ore. In 1996, Congress authorized a disposal cell for uranium mill tailings located near Grand Junction, Colorado, to operate till 2023 or until it is full, whichever comes first. The cell contains about 4.5 million cubic yards of residual radioactive material, receives approximately 2,700 cubic yards of additional waste per year, and has sufficient space to receive an estimated 235,000 cubic yards, which represents 86 more years of operation at current rates. H.R. 2278 extends the authorization operation for the Grand Junction cell till 2048 or until it is full, whichever comes first. The amendment in the nature of a substitute makes a technical change to the introduced bill to accurately cite the existing U.S. code and amend the bill's short title. And with that, I will yield back my time and ask if anyone wants to speak in the. Seeing no one, the question now is on, hold on. Question on the question now is on the amendment in nature of substitute. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 2278 as amended to the full committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to. Chair calls up H.R. 2389 and asks the clerk to report.
H.R. 2389, to reauthorize the West Valley Demonstration Project and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment at any point. So ordered. The chair recognizes himself to offer an amendment in nature of substitute, and the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2389, offered by Mr. Shimkus.
The chair recognizes himself in support of the amendment in nature of substitute. In the 1960s, the state of New York partnered with the developing commercial nuclear industry to demonstrate the viability of reprocessing spent nuclear fuel at the West Valley Service Center near West Valley, New York. When commercial operations at the site ceased, the environmental cleanup activities at the site became New York's responsibility. In 1980, Congress recognized that the federal government shared a portion of the responsibility to clean up the site and passed the West Valley Demonstration Project Act. The act established a partnership between the Department of Energy and New York and provided for a cost share, with 90% of the project costs coming from the federal government. While Congress agreed to provide cleanup funding for the West Valley Demonstration Project, as well as passage of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act 2 years later, prohibited DOE from disposing of the site's high-level radioactive waste. The material was generated from commercial activity and remains the responsibility of the state to pay for the disposal costs. H.R. 2389 reauthorizes DOE's activities at the West Valley site for the first time since 1981. The level of funding reflects appropriations provided to the site in recent years. The amendment in nature of a substitute updates the fiscal years the project is authorized and directs the Government Accountability Office to submit a report containing critical information to inform future decisions on the cost and timelines associated with various disposal pathways for the site's nuclear waste. And with that, I yield back my time, and the chair looks to the ranking member.
Mr. Chair, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. The record is clear that the high-level radioactive waste and transuranic waste left at West Valley were primarily from atomic energy defense activities and should be disposed of as such. I'm disappointed that this amendment, in the nature of a substitute, would strike Section 1B of the bill, causing the issue to remain unsettled, as it has since the 1986 IG report injected uncertainty into the final disposition of these wastes. I know some hope that DOE and New York will be able to work this issue out, but I do not think it will be that simple. Negotiations have languished for years, and some issues may not be able to be resolved at all. For example, the disposal of West Valley's transuranic waste. The sole permanent disposal site for this type of waste is the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant in New Mexico, but WIPP only accepts transuranic waste created through atomic energy defense activity. Moving forward, I hope we can address this larger waste classification issue in such a way that takes into account the site's unique history that has led us to this point. With that being said, retaining the reauthorization language is important to ensure the site's cleanup continues on schedule. The amendment also adds a new requirement for a GAO report. I would point out that our legislative hearing, both sides of the aisle requested DOE to provide calculations, including the methodology of those calculations of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act disposal fee New York State might be required to pay. As far as I am aware, DOE has not responded to that request for the record. So I find it odd that we are now asking GAO for similar information that we had requested of DOE but never received before this bill moved to markup. Mr. Chair, I hope we can take the time to review the language outlining the scope of this GAO report in greater detail between now and full committee to ensure that both DOE and New York State feel it will result in a final product that is equitable. Again, I want to express my disappointment that we are ignoring the crux of the disagreement over the West Valley wastes, but I hope we can continue to work together to ensure the site is eventually remediated and that the wastes are disposed of properly. If the amendment in the nature of a substitute is approved, I will continue to support the bill moving to full committee, but ask that the majority work with us if any language refinement is needed. And with that, I thank you and yield back.
Would the gentleman yield to me?
Yes, sir.
So this, as we found out, this is a particular conundrum that it also crosses other committees of jurisdiction, which will have a major say in this. So we think the CBO report is an important step in the right direction, but I want to commit to you as we move forward on how to fix the overall national, see, what I've been saying since the floor vote on 3053 is we have a national problem that needs a national solution. And I think part of the conundrum for us is right now we have stalled in the national solution. So if we can move the national solution forward and we have some certainty, then I think we may be able to try to address some of these other concerns. And I really do want to look forward to trying to help you all and actually come out and visit the site too. So,
Okay.
which
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. And yeah, let's at least work to provide for that certainty.
and then the gentleman yields back his time. Anyone else seeking time on the bill before us? If not, if there's no further discussion, the vote occurs on the amendment in nature of substitute. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment in nature of substitute is agreed to. The question now occurs on forwarding H.R. 2389 as amended to the full committee. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The bill is agreed to. Without objection, staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes to the legislation approved by the subcommittee today. So ordered. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
Quick business.
Thank you.
All right. When are votes?
Huh?
When